Council and the like. However, it does not do what we intended it to do, to make recommendations about the operations and performance and give complainants the meaningful opportunity to be heard in the process. The ordinance gives lip service by saying it shall provide policy guidance and individual case review, but it does neither. The amendments that were passed essentially gutted the good things that the Oversight Task Force had recommended. For example, in policy recommendations, it's still required that every single complaint be reviewed, leaving little time for policy work. The Police Oversight Board must rely on the suggestions and analysis of trend data collected and developed by the administrative office, not doing it on its own. It gutted the purpose of the audit function. It can only be done annually. It can only be done by a majority vote. It can only be 10% of the filed complaints, and only of use of force. Absolutely nothing else can be done by the audit function, which was stunning to me. It denies the individual complainant the opportunity to be heard. The ordinance is totally silent about a complainant speaking in the hearing. And it creates an obstacle to an appeal by putting essentially an administrative appeals process burden of arbitrary and capricious or contrary to law as the burden in order to appeal. So in conclusion, despite everybody's best efforts, including the Police Oversight Task Force, this ordinance fails to accomplish what it was supposed to do. No individual opportunity to be heard, no meaningful oversight.
Thank you. Alan Whiteman, followed by Sarah Kelly, followed by Tomas Romero, followed by Barbara Rofus. Welcome.
Thank you. Before the police oversight ordinance passed on September 18th, DOJ explicitly told me they do not get involved with specifics of municipal legislation. I've heard from others that DOJ told them the same. Yet Scott Greenwood told you and the people of this city that DOJ met with council staff, rejected specific police oversight task force recommendations, and vetted the ordinance put forward on September 18th. I don't know who is not being straightforward, but this process is not the way to win back public trust. Worse, the DOJ report pointed out as a problem the lack of complainant input into the complaint adjudication process. Yet this ordinance, supposedly vetted by DOJ, completely cuts complainants out of the process. I don't have time in my 2 minutes to tell you how. Worse, the DOJ pointed to the historical tendency of IROs to unfairly side with the police. Yet this ordinance, supposedly vetted by DOJ, increases the power of the executive director, blocks the POB from effectively monitoring the director's performance, and has Scott Greenwood telling this council that the POB has to trust the paid staff. I don't have time in my 2 minutes to explain further. Still worse, the DOJ pointed out the need for policy analysis and recommendations, yet this ordinance, supposedly vetted by DOJ, guts the ability of the POB to effectively perform this function. I don't have time in my 2 minutes to tell you how. As a whole, this ordinance is a failure. Finally, I support AFSCME, and I hope all of those of you who have been silent on the issue of Scott Sandy and the award to Sean Wallace find your voices. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Again, please hold your applause. Sarah Kelly, Councilor Bennett.
If I could just address the last two speakers, they don't need to come back down, but the council is, as you know, there was a split decision on whether to move forward with that ordinance as it was. I didn't support moving forward with it. We are meeting as a study session this week. I am committed to making corrections to the ordinance and welcome input on that. Thank you.
And that study session will be on Thursday, October the 9th at 11:30 a.m. and the public is welcome.